So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I used one speedlight to create this image. So hi everyone, this is Jiggie, a portrait and wedding photographer from the Philippines, and welcome to the channel. So before anything else, if you guys haven't joined the raffle to win one of 3 Nanlite lights that we are giving away, then there's still time because the raffle ends on September 30 and it's very easy to join. All you have to do is follow the mechanics that I will put in the description below. So with that out of the way, I am once again taking you behind the scenes during an actual wedding and show you how I created the image that I showed you earlier using just one speedlight. So the camera that I used for this particular shoot was my Sony a7 Mark IV, and the lens of choice was a 16-35 2.8 GM. The flash that I used was my Sony f60RM, triggered remotely using the Sony WRC1M, and the modifier that I had on my flash was a MagMod MagSpear and MagGel, which I will explain why in a bit. So let's go. So the first thing I look for even before I click the shutter is where is the light coming from. Normally, if you're shooting with natural light coming from the sun, there is some directionality to the light. However, when we are shooting this, the sun had already set, so my ambient light came from all these lights here that were illuminating this particular area. Since the light was coming from above, I already knew that it would not be flattering for my subject. It would be causing really ugly shadows here. So that's where I decided, okay, I need to put a flash to remove those shadows. But there's really a little bit more to it than that, and let me discuss what they are. So as I said earlier, this was the area I pinpointed shooting in. So I underexposed my scene. You could see here that I was about 3 stops underexposed. My settings were f2.8, 1/60, ISO 800. And the reason being, these wood panels looked amazing darker. And at the same time, I wanted to keep the highlights intact. I didn't want them to be flaring, or I didn't want them to cause a bit of distraction. So this is what I meant earlier about how the light was not flattering as is. This was a shot taken by my assistant photographer with just ambient light. These are the shadows that I was referring to. It wasn't really flattering to them. So this is how I set up my light. This is the MagSpear. This is the Sony f60RM. I had the gel behind. By the way, this is the mag shoe that's connecting my flash to the light stand. I had it relatively high so that the light would still seem as if it were coming from above, but this time directional. You can see that the direction is coming here. Now I also put a gel here, CTO orange. You notice that even with this behind the scenes photo, the light coming from here, the light coming from here, and the light coming from here look like they're set in the same color temperature, and that was really intentional. So that whenever I change the color temperature in post-production, since I was shooting in RAW, everything that I touch will just adjust the same way. In other words, if I want it a bit cooler, the subject and the background will adjust the same way. And if I wanted it a bit warmer, the subject and the background would both become warm. There's no conflict in terms of the color of the light. And let me show you now how it looked like from my angle. So this is how it looked like from my angle. Again, you could see the unflattering light on their faces, and there's no focus. And which brings me now to another technique that I love doing, which I call focusing by light. But when I say focusing by light, it is actually just a subtle difference of brightness from the subjects in the background or the scene. Because I want my subjects to be the brightest part of the image, but I don't want them to be so bright that it's so obvious that you pop the flash. So whenever I am dialing in my flash, I just want it to be about a stop brighter than that of my background, so that you know that they're in focus, that you know that there's light shining on them, but it's not overbearing or it's not in your face that it was lit. Because as much as possible, I want the light look as natural as possible. And we just got lucky that there's beautiful light. That's how I want it to be perceived. Like, I want a person viewing the photo thinking, wow, they just had beautiful light. And that's it. It doesn't really matter if it was ambient or flash. It's just all about beautiful light. So from here, this is the final straight out of the camera image. Absolutely no editing was done yet. However, there are some problems with an ultra-wide lens. As you can see here, I don't have my horizons or my verticals straight, And as you can see here, there is a bit of distortion on my subject. They look long, they look stretched, it just doesn't look right. And those are just some of the things that you have to deal with when you're shooting with ultra-wide lenses. However, it's also important when you're doing that, you know that it's happening and you know that you're leaving enough space for you to correct that distortion in post-production, which is exactly what I did here in the final processed image. You could see that I brought out a bit of the shadows, balanced it out a little bit more, fixed my white balance. This is what I meant about gelling my flash. Since this was a bit too warm, I made it a bit cooler. However, everything just changed too, because I had my flash color properly set to match that of the light that was in existence in the scene. And you can see that I fixed the distortion of the subject too, and I fixed all the vertical lines for it to be straight. Now, the important thing there is that you shoot a bit wider than you normally would, because you would be cropping a bit of the image. So now let me show you how I did those adjustments in Adobe Camera Raw. So the moment you've chosen your file, all you have to do is open it up. I usually do that by pressing Command R or Control R in a Windows machine. Then from here, the first thing I would normally do is just press Auto to see where that takes us. Immediately I can see that we're a tad bit overexposed, but I will just bring it back now, the exposure and maybe the shadows, bring it back a little. Now you could see what I was referring to earlier, that the color of my artificial light matched the color of my existing ambient light. The moment I adjust my color temperature, you see everything would adjust the same way. And I think this one would actually fit. I like that color temperature, and it may be just a little bit cooler. There we go. Now I go to geometry. With geometry, all I have to do is press Auto, and normally it would actually see all the vertical lines. But if you want to go a little bit more precise, you can do your own adjustment and just click on the line that you want straight, with like this one, and there you go. But then you'll have some areas here that you will need to fix in Photoshop, maybe cloning it a bit. But normally what I try to do is I scale it up a bit. That's why I was saying earlier that it's very important that you actually shoot wider than you would normally want to, just for these corrections. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to prevent this area here from being cut, because it would be very difficult to clone out the stairs. So maybe I will scale it now. Right there would be perfect. This one will be easy to clone, and this one will be easy to clone. Now the final touch, I would usually go to my optics and bring in a little bit of vignette to emphasize more focusing by light. Then from here, I just export it in Photoshop and do the necessary fixes, like cloning this area here, cloning this area here, and maybe removing this flower right here, which is what you saw in the final image. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And again, if you guys haven't joined the giveaway, there's still time for you to do so. The mechanics are in the description below. And if you want to see more of my images, you could always find me on Instagram. It's at Jiggie Alejandrino. And once again, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell. Okay, till the next video.